Okay, so kind of like my last video, I am going to review several movies that came out in the month of November. So with this video, I'm going to talk about Terminator Dark Fate, Motherless Brooklyn, Harriet, Last Christmas, Midway, Good Liar, Charlie's Angels, Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, 21 Bridges. There are a couple movies from this past month I didn't see or didn't bother to see. Also, Doctor Sleep, I'm going to give that its own review. Ford v Ferrari, going to give that its own review as well. And there's also a little special thing I really want to do with the art house movies that came out this past couple weeks with The Lighthouse, Parasites, and Jojo Rabbit. So look for those soon. So let's start off with Terminator Dark Fate, another Terminator movie. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of Terminator. Do like 1 and 2 just fine. I haven't actually seen 3, 4, or 5 because everyone around me was like, don't bother with them. They're really bad. They only get worse. So I kind of was like, no, screw it. I won't watch them. I'll just won't bother with them. So I heard when they were going to do this new one, James Cameron was returning, Linda Hamilton was returning, Arnold Schwarzenegger was returning, Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool 1, was involved. I kind of became more interested in this, and also I kind of liked how it's like they were saying, oh, this movie is completely gonna say 3, 4, and 5 just did not exist. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to do any more homework because it's like, hey, I already saw T1 and T2, so I'm good. I don't need to see any others. So this movie's just mixed to me because, okay, so the performances for the most part are decent, mainly from Linda Hamilton and Mackenzie Davis. Arnold Schwarzenegger's all right in this movie. I don't know, I kind of felt mixed about the new John Connor as well. I felt like she didn't really have much personality. I felt like her character wasn't really that well developed. Wasn't that interesting to me. So she kind of annoyed me towards the end of the movie, unfortunately, and I feel bad. But the main villain I also kind of didn't really care for. Kind of also didn't really have personality. I know he's a Terminator technically, but at least Robert Patrick in T2 at least had some sort of personality. And Diego Luna doesn't have any personality, unfortunately, in this movie as the main villain. Also, the script, for the most part, I kind of didn't care for, because mainly for the last act. Because the majority of them, no, not the majority of the movie. I would say that the last act kind of like tries to do so many things at once, and they can't really stick with it. They just like, okay, we'll do this. Oh, then it's gonna end and whatever. Okay, we'll do something different and then it'll end this way. Okay, we'll do this and then it ends and then the epilogue or whatever. And it's like it can't commit to us an idea for its final action scene. And it's like, oh, we're throwing ideas. Let's just throw all these ideas out there, and none of it is really landing. So the ending really dragged for me. Also, the whole killing off John Connor in the first 5 minutes. Yeah, I don't really like that. It's like, yeah, we watched T1, T2 just to see John Connor survive, and then Dark Fate is like, no, we're gonna kill him off immediately. Great, got invested in those 2 movies for a character who's now dead. Oh well. So, yeah. Terminator Dark Fate, while not horrible or anything, it's just not as good as I want it to be. I want it to be more exciting. I wanted it to be more... Yeah, that's the thing. I wanted it to be more exciting. Because, like, with all these people from the first 2 movies returning, I was kind of hoping for something more. And we ended up with less. So I will give Terminator Dark Fate 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Next up, we have Motherless Brooklyn, written by, directed by, and starring Edward Norton as a private eye who has a lot of issues. He has OCD, he has Tourette's syndrome, he's just a mess in his head more than anything. And his boss, played by Bruce Willis, is gunned down. You saw in the trailer. And he tries to find out why he was gunned down and who did it. So, and this movie was okay, because I feel bad because this is a passion project for Edward Norton. He's been trying to work on this for 2 decades. And Edward Norton is without a doubt a fantastic actor. This movie is just kind of a mess, I would say, unfortunately. Kind of like his mind. And I don't know if that's a good thing. Because, like, Edward Norton, he's really good in the movie. Almost everyone around him is really good. Production design of this movie is incredible. We'll say that. But the main issues that kind of kept me from... few issues that kept me from loving this movie. First off, the movie's way too long. This movie's 2 hours and 24 minutes, and it's like, this movie could be 2 hours. Like, you don't have to add a whole lot in this movie. But no, they just keep adding. And, yeah, because of the pacing is not that good, and the runtime does not really help. Like I said, the movie's a bit of a mess, kind of like his mind, so it's like, I kind of let that slide. But the one performance I really did not care for in this movie was Alec Baldwin. Because in this movie he plays a rich billionaire who is in politics right now, who is doing some really shady stuff, and yeah, you can kind of figure out who he's playing. And at least when he's on SNL doing that, he's at least being funny. And it's like, that is really funny, watching him on SNL do that and being out of control, basically, on that. But here, he's trying to be serious, and it just comes off as funny. He even has a line at one point, I forgot the exact line, but he actually says, "Make America great," or "Make New York great," or something. I'm like, okay, not only did you hit the nail on the head, you broke the board, or whatever. That's not even a phrase, I'm just trying to make that up. So it's like, I wish they just casted someone different for that part, because it's like, you were too obvious in that. Motherless Brooklyn, not a bad movie by any means. I guess there are just some things about this movie that just kept me from really, really enjoying it. I will give it 2.5 out of 4 stars, stream it. Alright, next up we have Harriet, a movie about the life of Harriet Tubman, and stars Cynthia Erivo as Harriet Tubman. And it goes through a lot of her life, particularly when she escaped from slavery, when she joined the Underground Railroad, all these things about her life. And for the first half of the movie, it is actually really, really good. The performance of Cynthia Erivo is really good. The performances of Janelle Monáe and Leslie Odom Jr. are really good. The score by Terrence Blanchard is really great. And the movie is moving at a really fast pace throughout the first half. It's really good. And then, somewhere in the second half, it just stops. Like, what happened? It's like they kind of gave up after the second act. Like, because, like, first off, they start using modern music in the second half. They try adding too much to her story. Like, not really adding, but, like, mentioning all these other things. And they don't really go into depth with them. And the pacing in the second half is not really that good, unfortunately, because of all that. Also, Joe Alwyn, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he plays essentially the main villain of this movie. And at first, he's fine in his performance. It's hard to say fine because he plays a racist, but he looks like he doesn't care about his performance by the end. Also, there are some questionable choices in this movie. I'm like, huh? I really have to look that up. Like, did that really happen? Because I feel like it didn't happen. And I usually had that gripe with movies that are based on true stories, but whatever. And I feel like by the end I kind of realized someone like Harriet Tubman does not deserve a 2-hour movie for her life. It would probably be better explained in something like a mini-series on Netflix, like 10 episodes, everything about her life. That would probably be better. But I would keep everyone involved with this. Everyone involved with it was pretty good, but the movie itself just really could have picked right back up in the second half, and it just didn't. So I will give Harriet 2.5 out of 4 stars, stream it. Alright, next up we have Last Christmas. So this movie stars Emilia Clarke as a woman who has basically, she's kind of given up on her life. She has a really bad job. She can't really find a place to stay. She's not talking to her family. She's had a lot of health issues. She drinks a lot. One day she meets Henry Golding's character, who is basically the opposite of her, and they start falling in love. Oh yeah, and it's Christmas, and there's George Michael music. The only things that really work in this movie are Emilia Clarke, Henry Golding, and Michelle Yeoh to a degree. Like, they're all really good in their performances. Everything else in this movie is bad. Like, I am stunned that this movie is bad. Because, okay, there are a few things I really hate about this movie. First, Emma Thompson. She co-wrote this movie, and yet she has the worst character in this movie. And the worst performance in this movie, actually. Because her character is supposed to be a Yugoslavian immigrant, and she gives off this really horrible accent. I'm like, this is so grating. This is so obnoxious. And I'm like, I'm not sure if this is offensive or not. And the big thing about this movie is that it's selling itself on the fact that it's using George Michael's music. And yeah, they don't really use it that well. It's mentioned that Emilia Clarke is a big fan of George Michael's music. And they just play it throughout. Like, they're not even in scenes where it actually makes sense. Also, when I saw the trailer for this movie, I thought about it, like, after one viewing, I'm like, here's the twist of this trailer, and if I'm wrong, I'm gonna be happy. But if I'm right, I'm gonna be pissed. And I was right. And I was so mad that it's so obvious. It's like, it's the most obvious twist. Anyone who has not seen a movie would be surprised by this twist. But I see movies all the time. And the problem isn't necessarily that they do the twist, it's more that it's obvious. And it just annoyed me. It's also I kind of found it odd that a lot of people in my theater watching this movie were laughing their heads off in this movie, but I'm like, this is not funny. This is not funny. This is just depressing. A lot of this movie is really depressing. And why are you laughing? Like, even when they do attempt to be funny, it's just odd and just bad. Like, Michelle Yeoh, despite her alright performance as a second mother figure to Emilia Clarke's character and her boss, but she has a love interest in this movie, and I thought that relationship was so weird and so out of place and just so bad it's good. And it doesn't help that the guy that Michelle Yeoh is attracted to in this movie looks like the dad from Seventh Heaven. It really does not. So yeah, Last Christmas, if you think you know what the twist in the trailer is, yeah, it's the twist. But so, other than some good performances, there's really nothing else that works in this movie. 1.5 out of 4 stars, stream it. Next up, we have Midway, directed by Roland Emmerich and starring a lot of people, including Patrick Wilson, Aaron Eckhart, Woody Harrelson, Dennis Quaid, Ed Skrein, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Luke Evans, Mandy Moore, Nick Jonas. It's about the Battle of Midway. This movie wasn't as bad as I was anticipating it to be because I'm not a big fan of Roland Emmerich's movies, no matter what. Because, like, I do like how he presents the movie, where it's like, we're presenting it from the American side, and we're also showing the Japanese side of this. And I thought that kind of worked for a while. But the problem with this movie is the same issue I have with all of his other movies. None of the characters have any character. They're all just people. They don't really have any personalities. They're just flat, and it's like, I couldn't even remember any of their names. And I feel bad because they're playing real life people. So I had to look up who they actually were in this movie. So it's like, good for you for making me do that. But it's like, I couldn't tell who was who in this movie. There's so many people who just look the same in this movie. It's like, wait, which character are you? Which character are you? That kind of annoyed me. But the actual Midway battle, that was really cool. So yeah, Roland Emmerich can do visual effects, spectacle movies. Obvious. But yeah, if you love his movies, you'll probably love this movie. But if you don't, you probably won't like this. Kind of like me. Overall, this is not a bad movie by him. This is just not a strong enough movie to really recommend. 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Next up, we have Charlie's Angels, directed by Elizabeth Banks. And I really wanted to like this movie. Not like, but like, wanted to really give this movie a chance. Because Elizabeth Banks is incredibly talented. I don't hate Pitch Perfect 2 as much as everyone else does. But there's really nothing I can say for this movie other than stuff happens. And, like, there's so many twists in this movie that are just not that surprising when you really think about it, because, like, these twists are in every movie, basically. And there's no chemistry between any of the three leads whatsoever. And for the most part, it doesn't even feel like they're trying. And I feel bad because this movie's getting so much hate. This movie is bombing so hard. And, you know, after watching it, I'm like, I get why it didn't do that well. But I just think the hate is too unnecessary. But not enough to say this movie's good. I think that's the way to say it. It's like, don't hate on this movie for the wrong reasons. Hate on this movie because it's not that good. The performances aren't that good. The twists aren't that good. The action sequences aren't that good. That's my main concern with this movie. And I think it's time we kind of just stop making Charlie's Angels material right now, because the McG movies didn't work, the TV show didn't work, and now this movie doesn't work. Also, there's a lot of weird cameos in this movie. Like, there's this scene with a bunch of Bosleys, like Elizabeth Banks, Joe Manunsu, Patrick Stewart. Also, for some reason, Michael's right hand is a Bosley. Like, and when I saw that, they were like, "Are you going to explain that?" Because I really would like answers on that. Also, there's a lot of interesting cameos in a mid-credit scene, like Jacqueline Smith, one of the original Charlie's Angels, Haley Steinfeld, Danica Patrick, Laverne Cox, Ronda Rousey. They all make cameos, and I'm like, okay. Like, it was just unnecessary. And, like, by the end, I kind of just didn't care about anything that happened in this movie. And it's like, again, even though I don't like this movie, I do feel bad for everything that's kind of happened to this movie. But I still wouldn't say watch this movie. I would give it 1 out of 4 stars. Skip it. Next up is The Good Liar, starring Ian McKellen and Helen Mirren. And this movie, they're two people in their late 70s, early 80s, I'm not sure, who meet and they begin a romance. But what they don't know is that he's planning on stealing a ton of money from her, and that's why he's being very friendly with her. So I was kind of interested in this movie, and overall, I think the movie's really good. I think it's really well made. I think the acting from Ian McKellen and Helen Mirren is really great. There are just a couple things in this movie that I just didn't care for. Mainly, not the twist itself, but more how this twist kind of came together. Because, like, when you get to this big reveal at the end, and you're like, well, it makes sense why you want to do this. What I don't understand is how everything that kind of fell into place. Because, like, when I thought about it more and more, I'm like, wow, there are a lot of pieces in this puzzle that needed to be done in order to get this perfect. And so that kind of took me out of the movie a little bit, even though I was invested for a good 75% of this movie. But the twist itself isn't bad, and it's actually quite good. But it's like, you kind of know how she's going to get revenge at some point, and it's like, you know, it's deserved, it's just not logical how it happened, unfortunately. So, Good Liar, overall good movie, but I kind of had problems with the last act more than anything. So, overall, I would say it's still worth seeing. 3 out of 4 stars, see it. Next up we have 21 Bridges, starring Chadwick Boseman as a police detective. And this is just a generic, cliche cop movie that throws everything at you. And, I mean, there's really not much to say. Everything in this movie is just effect. There's no cause. It's like, this stuff happens, and this stuff happens, and this stuff happens. And I'm like, okay, how did this happen? Why is this happening? Okay, so I should get back to Chadwick Boseman in this movie. He's really good, because, like, there's a scene where he's, like, reimagining the crime scene, and it's like, oh, it's cool, he's, like, a modern-day Sherlock Holmes. So it's like, that would actually be really cool if they did more with that. They don't. Stephen James, he's alright in the movie. He kind of has some good scenes, but I had a hard time understanding, like, what his character was doing, because there are times where it's like, no, we need to do this, and it's like, this is too far. It's like, hey, I know what you're up to, and I'm going to trick you or something. And I'm like, dude, pick a character, because this is not really working for me. Also, there is another, not really that surprising, dirty cop twist in this movie. And it just kind of annoyed me because they just throw it out there and they touch on it again in the last 10 minutes of the movie. And again, it just leads to what I was trying to say earlier. Everything in this movie is just cause. There's no effect. And it just kind of annoyed me throughout. So, Chadwick Boseman's really good. Stephen James is alright. The other performances, they're not bad. They're just not good. I feel bad for everyone involved with this movie. Anthony and Joe Russo, who did Endgame recently, and Infinity War and Civil War. I'm just surprised that this is their next project, essentially. Even though they produced it, I think someone else directed it. But my point is that I kind of wanted a better follow-up for the Russo brothers, as well as Chadwick Boseman. And this was just not it. Oh yeah, they also bring up the fact that, his father was a police officer and he died, and now he's a police officer because of that, I guess. Not really explained. And again, all cause, no effect. So, in the end, I'll give 21 Bridges 2 out of 4 stars. Stream it. Alright, the last movie I'm going to review is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, starring Tom Hanks and Matthew Rhys. And Matthew Rhys is interviewing Tom Hanks, who is playing Mr. Rogers, and it's based off an article. No, I never actually read the article, so I can't really confirm about that. So I thought this movie overall was very interesting, kind of an interesting therapy session, I would say. Because, it's also kind of a very interesting episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if you will. Really dug the psychological aspect of the movie. Also really dug Tom Hanks in the role of Mr. Rogers. I thought he was really good. Also really liked Matthew Rhys in the movie. He was pretty good as well. I guess my only real big issue with this movie was the whole setup. Because the whole movie is set up like an episode of Mr. Rogers. And for a while it worked. But then they kind of kept using it throughout the majority of the episode. And it doesn't really work in the second half when it becomes more serious. Because, for instance, at the beginning, it starts off like a regular episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And they kind of do this thing every once in a while where if they have to move somewhere else to a different location, they would actually do stop motion. It was on Mr. Rogers' show. It's at first I thought that was really clever. And then when they did it in the middle of a serious scene, I thought that was kind of clumsy. So that just annoyed me for a while. Overall, it's a very good movie. It does have a lot of lessons you can take away from it. Kind of like an episode of Mr. Rogers. It's just more the creative choices that I kind of didn't really get behind. So in the end, I'll give A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood 3 out of 4 stars. See it. Alright, so yeah, those are all my reviews right now for the month of November. I'm going to try to review The Lighthouse, Parasite, and Jojo Rabbit as soon as I can. Also, Dr. Sleep, Ford v Ferrari, what other movies are coming out. And what was your favorite movie this past month? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you like. This is Pat, and I'll see you next time.